Hello, everyone. Welcome to Commander's Pod, Beat the Cast. I'm Duncan.
I'm Sloan.
And I'm Jeff.
And we thank you for joining us today. One of the things we want to talk to you today is the segment we call This Doesn't Do What You Think It Does. And specifically, we would like to talk to you about damage modifiers and how they're applied. That could be combat modifiers or non-combat modifiers, things that add to or multiply damage.
Right.
So I think the way most people think it works is I am the one who owns the permanents being applied or the spells being applied. I'm the one who determines in what order they're applied. I have a +1 and a ×2, and it's a start of 3. So I can say it's +1 and then ×2 to get it to 8, right?
Correct.
You would think so, yeah.
But that is not how that works. It is actually up to the person who's permanent or the person who is being affected to determine how to apply those modifiers. They can choose to multiply the ×2 first and add the +1, so they only take 7.
They can. And this does get into a point where I will encourage the audience that this is not an area of politics. This is an area of honesty. If you know that they have the ability to do that, not telling them, I think you can do that because technically you have no need to have to do it.
Mm-hmm.
But I just think in casual commander specifically, if you're not in a tournament, you ought to just let them know that it's their choice.
I think you would be lying if you didn't do that.
Yeah.
Because either you have to say to them, how much damage do you take?
Right.
Or you're going to state a number, which is how you applied it, and then
Right.
you're telling them they have to take that. So you would be lying if you did that.
Right. And so the classic example for this is City on Fire, which is an enchantment, 5 red. So 8 mana, but it has Convoke. But it says, if a source you control would deal damage to a permanent or a player, it deals triple that damage instead. And the way it gets confused and mixed up is with Torbran, Thane of Redfell. He's 1 red, so 4. And he says, if a red source you control would deal damage to an opponent or a permanent an opponent controls, it deals that much damage +2 instead. And so what people will do is they assume, oh, I'm going to do the 2 first. I'm going to add the 2 and then triple it. When in reality, like Duncan was saying, no, they can choose, I'm going to take the triple first and then I'll add 2 after.
Right.
Which is, when you're tripling, a significantly less amount of damage to be taking. If I'm dealing what would be, 5 + 2, 7 × 3, 21, and now instead it's only 17, that's the difference between losing to commander damage and not losing to commander damage right there.
Sure.
And so there's a couple of other cards that do it, and I know a couple of other combinations that people have ran and done. Now the advantage is if you're always doing multipliers, ×2 damage or ×3, order doesn't matter, ultimately, because it's always multiplying, so it doesn't matter. But if you're doing these with addition, that's when doing them in the correct order. And
when you have different modifiers, a ×3 versus a ×2.
Yeah.
Yeah, when you apply them, will make a difference.
Exactly. So,
exactly. But that one, now that you know, it's pretty easy to apply. Mm-hmm. Some people are better at math than others. Maybe you need some paper for some of these combos.
It is, but you are going to run into times where you tell the table this and they do not believe you.
Yeah.
Okay? This is one of those situations where you will be 100% right and no one will believe you. And if you are the only one who's right and the other 3 don't agree with it, you can argue if you want to. In the business I'm in, I teach people if you're arguing, you're losing. And it is that way with friends and is that way with games. It's just not worth it.
Yeah. In most instances, just suck it up, take the extra damage that's probably being applied
and
to
then
you.
Once that game's over, go find better friends.
No. Yeah. No, but after that game's over, just show them.
Yeah,
say, hey, can I show you this now?
Yeah.
And if they're like, no, I don't want to see it, then yeah, find better friends. But if they're like, sure, you can show me. And then take the time then.
Yeah.
Because stopping in the middle of the game to argue about rules is...
It always sucks the fun out of
just not
the
fun,
game.
yeah.
And I've seen plenty of times when it just goes on and back and forth, and people are trying to look it up. Well, look what I found. And then somebody else says, no, but over here it says this. Because part of the problem is rules have been modified by Magic as new cards come out and change the scape.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So, you're not always going to find the definitive answer right away. So it's better to just come to a group agreement about how it's going to be applied. This in this instance, even though some of you may not agree with it, just so to move on.
If you want to stay away from arguments, you could just pick someone in the group who you trust, like someone named Jeff, and know that they'll make the right decision. So that's
It
always
must be
an
a
option
different
too.
Jeff.
Yeah, obviously that's not our Jeff.
It's one spelt with a G.
I mean, this
right?
one can be a little aggravating. And speaking of aggravating, what's aggravating you today, Jeff?
Well, what's aggravating to me is when it actually fits in here really good. It's when people get salty. And so not everybody will necessarily know that term, although I think they should, but it's essentially getting angry while you're playing the game. It's a challenge because some people get to play one game a month. Like, how often do I make it to the shop, Duncan?
Rarely.
Rarely, right? So when I go to the shop, I want to play. Well, if that experience is I'm feeling negative emotions, that's not an experience I want to continue. So that typically aggravates me. It also aggravates me when people are like get angry at other players at the table. So what I would say is just be real careful when you do that. Sometimes it's funny, and if you could play it off as funny, hilarious. But just understand when it's not, and don't do that because it can be very annoying to some people.
Right. And the other thing I would say is people who let the salt continue outside of that game into the next game. I have been the target of that many times. I'm sure you guys have
Sorry,
experienced
Duncan.
it. No, not from you guys. Not from you guys.
I'm not sorry.
But, it
Doors
can
have
happen.
never suffered.
And sometimes you may need to say to somebody, hey, I'm feeling a little salt. I feel targeted. I'm not doing anything, and you're still focused on me. I feel like this is from last game.
Sure.
But the biggest thing is if that happens, maybe it's time at that point to move to a different pod for that next match, or, just take a break, get up away from the table, talk it out maybe if you can talk it out. But if they're not going to talk it out, just step back a little bit, give them some time to think, and then come back. And
That's right. Also, know yourself. That's important too. Like if you're someone who loves winning and it's important to you to win, at least once a night, know that you might be the problem sometimes too. Because your emotions might be getting the best of you and you might not even know it. Or someone who just whatever reason, just know who you are and recognize your own triggers.
And we all do get salty.
Oh, yeah.
So at some point, we've all gotten salty. And sometimes you look back and you're like, that was a really silly thing to get salty
That's
about.
right.
They were just playing the game like I was, but it's just in that moment, it just rubbed me the wrong way.
So Johnny has a term he's always said about Sloan. I've always called him Johnny since he was a kid, but it be better.
Yeah, just be better.
Just be better. Yeah,
it's a great just everyday life. Wake up and be
let
better.
me just point out, if somebody's being salty, probably don't say that to them.
Yeah, don't say it to them in that immediate moment unless you really just want to see them get more salty. Probably don't say it to them then. But ultimately, yeah, I mean, I 100% am guilty of this. I get sometimes aggravated or frustrated when I see somebody making a play. I'm like, why are you doing this? Like, this makes no sense. You're just doing it because of, and it seems ridiculous. And of course, I always feel bad afterwards for being upset about it. But, it's something like Duncan said, we've all suffered, been on both ends of it, received salt for no reason and also given it probably for no reason and felt it. And so, it's something, and with us being as close as friends as we are and playing as long as we have, we've gotten on each other, and we also play Dungeons and Dragons together. So we spend a lot of time together. So
in case you were wondering how nerdy we are.
Yeah, in case
it goes past this.
Yeah, it goes beyond magic into the other multiverse of nerdness. So, but yeah, so we, when you spend a lot of time with people, kind of like your family, there tends to be some times where you just kind of get on each other, and during games, sometimes it happens. So it is what it is. But, at the end of the day, we all love Magic, and we still love playing it with each other. And, if we ever get a chance, we always try to set up nights where we can sit down and play 3 or 4 games together. So,
and by the way, we not only are friends, but we've known each other. Johnny specifically is like, family to me, like one of my kids even. And we work together too.
Right.
So if you want to know where there's a lot of potential stress and potential salt that can exist, try doing all of that together all the time.
All three of
and
us
then play
doing
a
all
game
these
where
things
it's competitive.
together.
Yeah. Absolutely.
So I think that's a good tip for everybody. Just remember, you're going to get salty. Other people are going to get salty. Don't let the salt override the table. Just sometimes it's better to step away and maybe set a game out than to let that salt.
Or you can pull a classic move like I did and just have a mat that says Salt Life on it and just absorb it and read it constantly.
Which is the perfect mat for you.
Yeah, I love it. It's a great mat. So
I mean, it's a common part of Magic and it's a common part of Commander. But let's talk about Commander's general outlook right now. You know, there's a lot that's going on with Commander, a lot of good stuff. In the past couple of years, there's been some controversies. But where do we think Magic stands right now, and it's specifically Commander? How is the game of Commander doing right now?
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the cool things to look at is how Commander, when it first came out, was just known as a super casual format that honestly, the original person who created it just did it because he wanted to play Magic, but in a different way. And it's now risen to this level of popularity to where it's pretty much the most popular format in Magic at this time.
By far. Yeah.
Yeah, by far. To the point of now where they've specifically started building sets and cards around Commander. So I think Commander is going in a good direction. We mentioned in previous podcasts how they kind of are still trying to figure out how to give the best EV, using Jeff's term from the previous podcast.
Most of us would just call it increasing the cost.
Yeah, they're trying to figure out a good way to give good EV for the Commander sets that they've been trying to make in these past couple of years. And so there's a little bit of balance there, and I think that overall they're doing a good job of adding new cards and mechanics that increases the game's overall
but so there's
value.
There's good and bad to all of this, right? So they're adding powerful cards to make the cost worth it when they raise the price, right?
They are.
Isn't that a little bit like a double-sided sword there? Because on one hand, it's great to get powerful cards, but there's a thing called power creep where like this power level just seems to be rising and rising, and everything seems more powerful than the thing that came before.
Yeah, so the card you bought last year has been replaced by a better card this year.
Yeah,
I mean, it used to be token doublers were like, oh my word, that deck's really powerful because now it has doubling season and anointed procession that has parallel lives. Well, now we have triplers, token triplers.
Yeah, I have one.
So I think if we're going to talk about the state of Magic, it's important to understand that it is not in a bubble. So it is not existing outside of other factors. The reality is it is currently owned by Hasbro.
Yeah.
And there are some real challenges for Hasbro. They just laid off a whole bunch of people because if you have children or you even know of children, when I was a child, we bought toys.
Yeah.
I bought G.I. Joes when I was a kid. I loved G.I. Joes, okay? That'll date me some. My children, they don't care about toys at all. They don't buy toys. Even for Christmas, they don't want them.
Well, so my son will buy toys. He's 9. He will buy toys, but they don't have the same meaning or value. Like he'll buy them, he'll have fun with them for a very short amount of time. They don't last. Like they hold their interest for a much shorter amount of time.
The IPs are not great. It's like whatever movie's coming out now, and then when the next movie comes, those toys are obsolete.
Yeah.
So Hasbro's in a tough spot because their main money maker is not generating very much value.
Right.
So typically businesses like Wizards, there's a couple ways you could do it. You could buy a business like Wizards as this big company to supplement your profit, or you could buy a business like Wizards with the intent to make it more profitable and sell it off.
Right.
We don't yet know what Hasbro's plan is.
Right.
So it could be in the best time ever for Magic. It potentially could be the worst time
and so the
ever for
arguments
Magic.
for that are like Universes Beyond is bringing some really cool things into Magic. Some people aren't as excited about it as others.
Right.
So again, this is something that has a plus side and a minus to other people, but there's new IPs being used.
Yeah.
Last year we had Lord of the Rings and Doctor Who. This year we get Assassin's Creed, we get Fallout.
Right.
Yeah, in previous years, they've even done League of Legends was one of the ones that they did, which for anyone who's not a computer gamer is one of the biggest MOBAs in the world with a pro scene and everything and a world championship. And they did a collaboration with that. They've done TV shows.
Walking Dead.
So, they're definitely branching out and they're trying to pull other people. I feel like they're trying to get other people in. I mean, people who may never play Magic but played League of Legends might be like, I want to buy those cards because they look cool. I love those characters. I play those characters. Same thing with Walking Dead. Maybe they'll never play Walking Dead. And even our friend here who's helping us produce the podcast, Jack, is a huge Lord of the Rings fan. Doesn't want to play Magic at all, but he wants some of the Lord of the Rings cards because they're cool.
He wants to play Magic. He just doesn't.
He doesn't know it yet. That's right. You know, we're getting them there.
But so now they're moving into Marvel, right? That's the big announcement from
next
last
year.
year.
Yeah.
Next year we get Marvel, and then it's going to be an ongoing thing. We're going to get continuing sets.
So let's
from
just do this. How do we feel about it? I can tell you, for me,
Yeah.
I love it. Like, I have no problem with the idea of universes beyond. I think it's kind of cool that you have these universes kind of colliding.
Yeah.
There's a role-playing game I used to play that you guys have played with me called Rifts.
Yeah. Great game.
Tabletop RPG, where these rifts open up and there's all these different worlds that come in, and it gives you all of this ability to do different things, from sci-fi to high fantasy to real world stuff.
So the argument is, you know, I'm conflicted about it. I've loved the things they've come out with for the most part.
Yeah.
But like Commanders, I didn't feel like it fit. Or Transformers. When they put Transformers in Brothers War, I just didn't feel like that fit Magic. It just seemed like,
That
here,
is
let's
the
jam
argument.
that in there.
Yeah,
Well,
that
and
is the argument.
And
yeah.
I feel like, so this is my take on it. If they do it right and well, I feel like it can be amazing. So my point is, and it's actually an article I wrote on our website, commanderspod.com, is the idea of taking the characters and keeping them true to who they are while making them playable cards in Magic. So the idea, for example, the Aragorn the Uniter card I brought up, I thought it was a really cool card, and the way they used him as who he is in the books, Aragorn, made sense for what that card is, where he's uniting all these different colors together and getting different value out of all, and it was a well done card. But then you have, like, for example, Transformers, it kind of just seemed like, I guess, and they kind of just shoved it in there and made it fit for the sake of just adding it in there.
Well, I think there were some challenges with that too. A lot of people don't pay attention to the art, but like, I think one that gets a lot of discussion is like one of the Transformers has a basketball hoop in it.
Yeah.
So you're like, wow, this is really world breaking for me that there's just a random basketball hoop here. But I personally don't have a problem with it, but I leave room for others too. Like,
and I think
you know?
I think it's, for me, it's on a case by case scenario. We'll see how it feels for me playing the Magic cards. I like the Marvel cards. I like the idea, right?
Yeah.
I like the idea of playing Wolverine in Magic. That's, I like Wolverine. I like Spider-Man. I like these heroes. I want to play them. I don't know if I want to play them in Magic. We'll find out. But like, so some of them I think they've done really well on.
Yeah.
And like you said, some not. One of the big ones that stands out to me is the Evil Dead. I know, Sloan, you're not really a horror fan.
Nope.
And I
No
don't
idea
think
what you're
Jeff's
talking about.
really an Evil Dead fan, but I'm not a horror fan necessarily, but I love the Evil Dead movies. And
I'm
so
a
like,
fan of evil being dead.
okay. Well, that's what he does. Ash, the hero, he wants to make sure that the evil is dead.
Which is kind of a comedy too, wasn't it?
It was very
less of a horror
It's
movie,
it's a very sticky,
Yeah.
horror style.
Slapstick, yeah.
Yeah, the action adventure. But when they executed it, they turned him into pure steel paladin, I think it was. And I'm like,
Right.
So you're talking about secret. That was a secret layer.
that was a
wasn't it?
secret layer,
Yeah.
but it's still, it's universes beyond. It's bringing these characters in,
Yeah.
to
And I think that's
So-
the other thing too, is the older way they did it was they just did alternate arts, right? So they didn't create a whole new card like the Lord of the Rings sets. Those were new cards. They didn't just take a picture and put it on an existing card and say this is that card. Those were new cards.
But
and
if they had done that, I think it
Right.
would have felt better. If they chose cards
That were more appropriate.
were more appropriate. He's a very gritty, very dark hero. He's not really a great
So
guy.
I think we're actually getting into. So that technically falls into Universes Beyond, but I almost view it more as like an art shift, because I don't think those cards are just variants on current cards. They're just
Right,
giving
they're
you
alternate
different arts.
Right.
And
true,
so
but-
people can go out there and they can buy proxies of their, which I think you have a whole proxy deck that's Calvin on Hobbes.
Calvin and Hobbes,
Right? So you purposely wanted Calvin and Hobbes, so you went and did that. That's all they're doing. I see that more as like, I just want different art on my card. And I
Right.
think that presents even more problems, because some of those, like Phyrexians we've talked about in one, you can't read them. Japanese art. I have a whole deck with a ton of Japanese art in it.
It's so
That's a
annoying to play
huge
against.
mistake because I have to look up every card. It's the
It's
worst
so annoying.
experience. And so I think what they're doing there is different. I think that is possibly hurting the game because the cards are screwy. You don't recognize them. When someone puts a pure steel paladin across you and you're playing with 5 people, you see it, you know what it is.
Yeah.
When it looks like Ash from the Evil Dead, you might not recognize it. And the reality is when we're playing with 5 people, you can't always see their whole board, right? And you're not going to go grab every card they play.
Yeah.
So you can miss things because they look wonky.
Right.
So if that's your problem, I'm kind of right there with you.
Yeah, well, it's not necessarily that. It's just having in talking about these IPs that come into Magic, make it fit, make it feel natural, make it flow for me is very important.
Right. Make the card that you're choosing, if you're doing alternate art, make it a card that makes sense for that person to be on, right? Having like you said, Ash a lot better than I do, but having him be pure steel paladin seems like quite literally the opposite of a card that you would probably choose for him to be based off of how you're describing
Right.
him.
In Princess Bride, they had him be Fing the Fangbearer, a death touch that makes him infect. That we
Which
talked
is
about.
just a stupid card anyway.
Yeah,
Even though Johnny has that deck.
but
Don't hit on
so
infect.
I don't feel like that was a great
Right,
fit.
and I think that's
and I
part
love
of-
Princess Bride, but I didn't buy that
Yeah.
because I just didn't like the fit.
Yeah, and I think that's part of my whole point is if they're doing it right, if they're either going to create a whole new card with new mechanics on it that makes sense for who that character is from that series. For example, if they make a Loki card, which I'm sure they will, with the Marvel set coming up, and everyone looks at it, they're like, this is not Loki-esque at all. Like, why would Loki be this card if they do an alternate art or they create a new mechanic for him? It's like, this doesn't make, to me, that's where the issue comes in. So kind of like what you're saying with that alt art for Ash, it didn't make sense for him. Like, why would he be that card?
I think they did it because he did a thing with equipment, and it's like he uses a lot of equipment, but they could have done a better job.
Yeah, but furthermore, they could have just made him a whole new card and gave him his own. So they definitely could have done a better job. So I think if they're actually being considerate of what the cards mean, because one of the cool things I will say, and I know we're fanboying over the Lord of the Rings set, but they actually had the original cast from the Lord of the Rings movies come in and talk about their cards and stuff and showed them, and it was kind of cool for them to see that and see those people playing, showing their cards of their characters from that series. And it was cool how all of those abilities made sense. The Frodo card and the Sam card.
They were so much fun.
And they were just fun cards. And even some people hated it, but I even like the one ring mechanic that they added to it with the ring bearer. I thought that was a cool idea of you can have one ring bearer and he gets special abilities. And it was a cool mechanic. And, so I think if they do it right and they stay true to who the character is that they're trying to mimic in Magic, I don't see a problem with it. And I think I'm going to love it.
And this comes back to, hey, it's your money.
Yeah.
If you don't like it, don't buy it.
Well, and feeding right into that. So I was watching a YouTube video the other day that was talking about the most recent set that just came out, Murders at Karlov.
Oh, yeah.
And the pre-order sales for that. And it was everybody's watching the set because they just came out with the play boosters. They got rid of draft boosters and set boosters. And I love that, by the way, because I thought they had too many different boxes for each set.
Yeah.
Well, and it was hurting their business model because at the end of the day, they had too many draft boosters left over.
And it was hurting us because if you go to tell your wife, hey, can you go buy a pack of Magic cards, and they come back with the wrong one, you're like, are you serious? Like, not this one.
Well, and it was
They all
actually
look
pretty.
the
It was
same.
pretty loving when our wives learned though the right name of the booster pack.
Right. Yeah.
And you're like, oh, that was actually really thoughtful.
Oh,
Yeah,
yeah.
she remembered.
It's great that your wife did that.
Yeah.
She's my wife just says, just buy it.
Just go get it.
Just buy it. I don't want to do it wrong.
Right.
But no, but so they were taking this data from TCG Player.
Okay.
Right. And about pre-orders and how much, and Murders at Karlov, with the pre-orders were way, way, way down.
Yeah.
Way down. I mean, ridiculously down.
Which leads us to a part that's kind of scary, which is, are they neglecting their own IP?
Right.
Are people so excited about, like for me, I don't care what you do. I'm buying at least 5 or 6 boxes of the X-Men when it comes out because I love X-Men.
Right.
From a kid watching the cartoon to reading the comic books, I don't care what they charge. I don't care what's in it. I'm buying it.
Yeah.
Well, that can sort of rob it makes the IP of Murders at Karlov a little less exciting.
Right.
So I don't know. Maybe
Because-
that's a mistake on their part. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I will say too, because I believe the whole point of Murders at Karlov was to be based off of Clue, right? That's kind of like the whole shtick with it is it's Clue essentially, and
Yeah.
so even
Because
the
of
pre-cons,
Hasbro.
yeah. So the pre-cons are kind of based around like Clue characters, and so you have all the different characters from Clue are now pre-con commander decks, I think. So
When was the last time you played Clue?
not in a while. I kind
So
of
were
forgot
you
it was
really
a board
like,
game.
you know what I really need? I need a Clue version of Magic.
So here's the thing. I play a lot of board games.
yeah.
Yeah.
I have played Clue recently. Maybe not the classic version, but there's like an electronic version of Clue
Yeah.
that was made back in the 90s that is actually one of the best games I've ever played. I own it and I play it a lot. But
Okay.
so I like Clue. I pre-ordered the Clue set
Yeah.
specifically.
Yeah.
Like not just
Which
the
I'm
regular.
excited about playing that with you.
Yeah, I mean, and I will say this: I did look through some of the cards because that's what we do, and I did find a couple of cards, specifically one card that I am over the moon about and kind of giddy is Commander Mustard. He's going to be, I believe he's in one of the pre-cons, but the reason why I'm so excited about him, and Jeff and Duncan might be tired of me saying this, but for the longest time, I have loved soldiers in Magic the Gathering. I've always liked them. I always thought it was a cool idea, and I've always wanted a true soldier commander for the format we play. And they always are just like one word off, and they just never quite really made a true commander that was a soldier commander for soldier. But this new guy, Commander Mustard, 3 red white. And he does vigilance. Other soldiers you control have vigilance, trample, and haste. 2 red and a white. Until end of turn, soldiers you control gain whenever this creature attacks, it deals 1 damage to defending player. As soon as I saw, I'm like, I'm buying this card. Like, I don't care if it costs me $50 because I have wanted a commander for the longest time that was actually a soldier-based commander. They have humans, they have warriors, they have literally everything else. And they've never made a true soldier commander.
I think Dunk and I are both happy you have that because we could stop hearing about it.
Yeah,
So it's-
yeah.
it's
So
very
I am
good.
planning on getting this, and it's really cool. So I do think they did a good job with some of the cards and incorporating them. Again, going back to our previous topic of making sure they meld well and they felt good as a move. But yeah, I think Jeff might be right in the sense of they might be focusing so much on making these niche sets that they're excluding the general populace of Magic potentially.
Well, so I think there's some truth to that. I think people are getting jaded by some of these special sets that the regular sets have less
Right.
pizzazz. But I also think they're coming out with so many sets every year now.
Yeah,
there's
so many
too many.
sets, so
Yeah.
many secret layers. There was 54 or something secret layers last year, and
Yeah.
there was like 10 sets.
I don't mind the secret layers because you don't have to buy those, but I think there's too many sets, and I also think they have an IP problem with like, I don't know about you, but the books and the stories are confusing. They have not. They need some help.
Well,
Like
and
they need to get cartoons for kids. Or,
so they
For
had
you?
a cartoon
Cartoon
that
for
went
you?
in
What?
development, and they abandoned it.
Yeah, Crim on MTG Goldfish talks about this a lot. Like, geez, make an anime or something. Just tell a coherent story, please.
Well,
Yeah,
I
for
think-
the
and
love of
they
God.
have been notoriously bad at that. They used to do books, and the books were so bad nobody bought them.
Yeah.
So then they're like, well, we're just gonna put the stories on our website. Have you ever read any of the stories on the
I
website?
have sometimes seen the video they release.
Yeah, the videos
and
are
they're
cool.
okay.
But
They're
have you
okay.
ever read the story?
I tried to.
You did really?
A couple
I've
years
never.
ago, they were so confusing, and I'm someone who reads Kant. Okay, I can understand readings. I was like, "What is going on?"
Well, I can't
This
read.
is just
so
terrible.
I was fine. I didn't even try to read it. I can't read, so we're good there. But yeah, I mean,
you just memorized a lot
I
of words.
just memorized a bunch of words. That's all I do, guys. But I mean, I've never
Literally
I've never,
the definition of reading.
Yeah, I know. I've never actually sat down and tried to read the entirety of the lore of Magic, just mainly because I genuinely do hate reading. But you know, like they're saying, there's every single time they create a new set, it's supposed to be changing the lore and the landscape of the universe that Magic the Gathering is in. So it's like, well, if you're creating 12 sets a year, pretty much you're just, no wonder why no one can keep up with you. You're doing so many changes in the lore of the game.
Yeah, and they're like,
it's
okay,
absurd.
well, we're not going to change the lore much. Let's just have a wedding. Yeah. And you're like, Okay, that doesn't seem very compelling.
Yeah, or
And they're like,
there's a
"Let's just-
murder.
Yeah.
Like they
there's
just
one
had, they had just last year like this epic battle where like tons of people died.
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
then like, but there's been one murder.
Well, let's find out who it is.
Yeah.
That's
But
funny.
so so I think the general gist I'm getting out of this is it's very subjective, as is most things. But I think that Commander has a good outlook. I think there's a lot of neat products coming out. They've kind of started homing in on where is too far to push the price point. Okay, let's not push it that far. I don't think the power levels are getting out of control. I think Commander, we're doing good. I think the state of Magic in general, like Standard, maybe that's the sign we're getting. Maybe Standard's the thing that's in trouble.
Well,
It's
we
the
probably-
this is a Standard set
Yeah.
that is not
This
done
probably
well
needs to
for
be another
pre-orders.
discussion too, because getting into tournaments and stuff,
Mm-hmm.
there's not enough. There's no options for that. So if you're a sweaty tournament player, there's not a lot of options for you in the Commander sphere.
Right.
And that
Yeah,
could
that
be a
will
mistake for them
definitely-
too. But
Yeah.
that's another topic for another day, probably.
Yes, yeah, I think
absolutely.
so.
But like you said, I think overall Commander's in a great place in regards to its overall landscape. Yes, they're making mistakes. Yes, they might be having some issues here and there. But I think overall they're right direction.
I mean, guys, it's keeping Hasbro alive.
That's true.
It is very profitable, and people are like, they're making too much money. Guys, if you want to keep playing Magic,
They need to make
they
money.
need to make money.
Right.
So that complaint is ridiculous.
And part of the problem too there, just to be clear, is that Hasbro is a large corporation and Magic is their number one property.
Oh,
or,
by
or I should
leaps
say
and bounds.
Wizards of the Coast. 'cause
Yeah,
I
Wizards
include
of the
It's their
Coast.
most
Right.
profitable
Yeah.
property.
So
yeah.
so they have to support the rest of the company in some aspects.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I think we all agree that Commander's looking good. We're excited for the stuff coming out. But let's move on to a section that we call Counterspell. It's kind of a point counterpoint, kind of looking at both sides of an issue. Today's topic, we're going to talk about what makes a game of Commander fun.
Oh gosh.
Right? Well, really subjective. Everybody's got to have a different answer, but I thought it's neat that everybody kind of looks at it different.
Yeah,
So I know,
absolutely.
Jeff, your big thing is probably winning, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So, you have those personality tests you could do. Some companies you work for sometimes will do that. Yeah, I'm very motivated by winning. I
Right.
don't mind losing. I just
You
I
want to
don't
win
mind-
most of the time.
I can learn from the losing, but I want to win. Like if I go to a game store or even have people over my house or we play somewhere and we play 6 games, if I don't win 3 of them,
You had a bad
if
night.
I'm being honest, if I don't win 4 of them,
Yeah.
I'm probably upset. Like I want to have a good percentage.
If you don't win 5 of them.
And when I say upset, it's sort of like my aggravated section, right? I'm not really upset about it. I just feel like I didn't do as well as I should have done.
Right.
So yeah, that's me.
Yeah,
For whatever it
and,
is.
And to be clear, just to be fair to Sloan and I, it's not like you win most of the games. I think we're all probably fairly even if you look at our entire win.
I mean, I would say as of more recently, yeah, we've probably done a lot better of tuning our decks and stuff like that.
Yeah, in the
You
beginning,
guys have caught up a lot.
yeah, you guys in the beginning you definitely had an edge, but I think now
Yeah.
we walk away and usually you've split. Between the three of us, so I think we're pretty even.
I've also made decisions being like growing as a player to go, even though winning is so important to me, my friendships are more important. So if I just won with a deck, I'll put that deck away and I'll pick a deck that will struggle to win. So I still try to win, but that deck has a harder time winning.
You hear that, Duncan? He cares about us so much he intentionally picks a bad deck.
Yes.
Just so we
Not
can
bad
win.
deck. I don't make bad
Of course, the
decks.
other side to that is he can say, well, that deck was undefeated today. So
Yeah, but I don't care about that. All I care is
But
total.
yeah, I enjoy winning too. I'm a very competitive person. I grew up playing sports, and I part of my kind of whole thing that I try to be forthright with is if you're gonna do something and it's supposed to be competitive and you're not trying to win, then don't do it with me.
well, there are
It seems kind of silly that you're going to do something competitive. Like the people who are like, oh, we're going to play, disc golf and we're not going to keep score. I'm like, okay, I'm going to keep score. I don't care if you want to keep score or not, because why are you out here if you're not trying to get better and, So I do like winning, but yeah, I would say out of the three of us, Jeff is definitely
That's the top of his list.
he's the
I think.
top of his list for sure.
I have a second that's close behind, but
Which is that?
want to hear. You want to hear it now? So
Yeah.
my other one is. So some people like to play powerful cards. This is why that like Timmy, Spike, those things don't always completely do it justice.
Yeah.
So some people like to play those big splashy cards. Some people like to play the cool tricks. Some people I like to play the cards that I've collected.
Yeah.
So like, if I've bought a new card, I love to see that card come out and play.
Yeah.
Which
Whether
is so
it's-
hard sometimes. Sometimes you put a
Yeah,
card
you-
in your deck and you don't see it for several games.
Yeah, no, 100%. But I like to see my good cards, and a lot of times my good cards are expensive cards.
Yeah.
So like, I want to see my Mana Crypt and play it. Now, it's not in every deck,
Yeah.
but it feels good to me when I play that expensive card I've collected. And, I'm sure I get a lot of judgment on that, but I'm just being honest.
Yeah. I mean, there's nothing wrong with having pet cards that you love to play and love seeing them get out. Like, even if there's some people like, they'll have pet cards that aren't good, but just because they love that card and maybe what it does, and it's, they love playing it and making it, have its moment of glory. And people are like, why are you playing that card? It's like,
Well,
I just
I
like
play.
it.
I played
It's a
for
fun card.
years. I played Jin-Gitaxias Core Augur. That was like the first commander deck that I really invested
You
in.
loved that
I
deck.
loved
So
that deck.
much.
I still have it in a form.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I still love that card's in there, but it's no longer the commander. It was 10 mana to get out. I mean, it was super expensive, very hard to get ramped
See,
up.
that's a big
and then
splashy
people
one.
would get
Yeah.
rid of it as soon as it hit the battlefield because
Yeah.
they didn't want
Well,
to see it.
if they were smart. Right?
Yeah.
Right. But, so yeah, definitely there are some cards, like you said, maybe it's not the best card, but you just love
Well,
it.
even sometimes it is the best card. Like Gaia's Cradle. Like people are like, that's such a gross card. I love playing that card.
Yeah, and
It's a
I don't
good
have a
card.
single deck where I have that in.
Yeah.
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 I mean, so
It's very personal in that respect.
Yeah,
but-
absolutely.
But, so the cool doing cool tricks you mentioned, I love playing cool tricks.
I will say one of the funnest things, I think, most fun things, Jeff's staring at me. Most fun things is when you get to do like a really fun trick or combo, especially like the longer the combo is, I feel like the more fun it is to pull off. So
You are our combo player for sure.
I think it's super funny, especially if you discover it in that moment. It makes it even more fun. I feel like we played a game once. I have an Arkelos, I believe is his name, deck, and he's a turtle guy. And basically his ability is if he's tapped, everything comes in tapped. If he's untapped, everything comes in untapped. Well, Duncan was playing a group hug deck, and I didn't realize it, but when he played a spell, it let me play a spell, which let me put a land in, which then let me create a treasure token. Because I created a treasure token, I had another guy out that let me put a permanent in for free because that permanent came in for free, and then I got to draw a card. And so like I was just in this eternal loop of I just created 6,000 mana, drew my entire deck, and I can cast everything. I think I win the game, guys. And it was just this funny loop that we just kind of stumbled across because I was reading the cards. I was like, wait a minute. This triggers, which makes this trigger, which makes this trigger, which makes this trigger again, which makes this trigger. And I get to do it. It was just like the most absurd thing. And I just kind of stumbled
or
across
when
it in
someone
that
else
game.
plays a card that then makes you combo.
Yeah.
That's always fun
Yeah,
too.
and that's essentially what had happened in that game was he played that, and I didn't realize it until it started happening. Like, oh, you just made me combo.
Yeah.
Like, you made me get there.
So I had a deck that I played for quite a while. I still have it. It was clones and wheels,
Yep.
right?
Yeah, yeah.
But what I didn't realize is then I started playing
Planeswalker
against.
Commander, right?
It was dual commanders.
Tevish,
Yeah.
Zot, and
Tevish Shah and Sakashima of a Thousand Feasts.
Yeah,
yeah.
great. Great combo.
So what I didn't realize is that deck's real good against Nekusar players.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Because
you
they
just
throw out
copy-
Nekusar.
you
Now I copy Nekusar. Now I wheel. Now you're taking the damage, and yours is adding to everybody else's damage.
Yeah.
So, and I found I could out Nekusar because now I can make 2 or 3 copies because Sakashima's not legendary. And
Yeah,
I
so
mean,
you
that
just
is
keep
a clone
copying
deck,
him.
right?
Yeah.
You
yeah.
out deck someone else's deck. And
yeah.
Yeah, I see. Even though you might be into someone might be into winning, and they might be into these other things. I still one of my favorite plays. We'll bring my cousin David, who we play with,
Yeah.
into the story because you guys will remember the time he played Pact of Negation,
Yeah.
Oh, yes.
And then I destroyed two of his lands.
Yeah, and
he died on his
because he
upkeep.
couldn't pay for it
That's
because
right.
he needed the blue and he only
That's
had
right.
those. Yeah.
So, like, even though I
Oh,
like
man.
winning, I don't even know if I won that game. I have no idea who won that game.
Side note
Yeah.
to Pact of Negation. Do you know that they have now made the rule that you cannot forget to pay? If you forget and you still have an option to pay it, you can pay it after the fact.
Oh, good.
So if you go to draw, like in a tournament, say,
Yeah.
you go to draw and you move on. If you forgot to pay and you still have the mana, you can pay for it. I don't think that the spirit of the card, I feel like, is broken by that, but it's probably a little more fair.
Yeah.
Because there was actually a tournament where a player tricked a player into not paying it by getting him distracted by saying, hey, let me know when you go to your first main, please. It's very important that you let me
wow.
know. So he was focused on
mean,
that, forgot his upkeep trigger, and
Good
ended up
for that
losing it.
guy, I guess, man. He got it done.
I guess so, but a lot of people felt like that was a little bit of a
It's a little
dirty win.
shady. I wouldn't do it. I wouldn't
Yeah.
feel good about
Especially
that.
because it wasn't Commander, it was a 1v1,
Yeah,
and
standard.
it was
Yeah.
for the
Yeah.
big tournament.
Yeah,
Like, it
yeah.
was-
I don't love that play, but hey, it's within the rules. Guy did what he did
Yeah.
to win.
And so
whatever.
speaking of ways people, think Commander is fun is maybe doing that. Maybe
Yeah.
some people think
Tricking
that's
people.
I think that's beyond
Well,
beyond fun
I mean,
politics. That's just
true.
cheap.
But remember, there have been people who they do politics and lie. They say, "I'll do that," and then they don't, and then they make you do what you're supposed to do. They break their deal and they win. They think that's fun. They think it's funny, and they think they're having a great time. In reality, no one else is probably enjoying
that's
it.
the
So-
only
so
time
I met-
that you
I
should
met-
carry something outside of a game. If someone's a liar,
Yeah.
you should remember that for the next game.
Oh, yeah. No, I see what you're
Yeah,
saying.
dude,
Now, I thought
yeah.
you were saying, like, take
No,
the
take
cat
them outside
Yeah, no.
to the parking
Oh
lot.
yeah, because I'd be real effective at that.
Yeah, you wouldn't be. You would probably call me Sloan. Come here.
So I actually played a game against Evil Johnny and Evil Sloan. And what I mean by that is, so
thought he was always
Sloan
that.
doesn't like politics, right?
Yeah.
He
Correct.
doesn't like, he will not make deals. He will not,
Not a fan of it.
make promises, stuff like that.
I'm too smart for that.
So I played against a
Whatever.
guy, and I've been playing against this guy he was in our local shop. He still plays there, but I had played against him probably dozens of times, but I never really ran into a political situation with him. So I said to him, hey, I'm going to take care of this problem, but please don't attack me because this is leaving me open, and then that leaves you able to kill me. Please don't, because I'm dealing with our common problem. And he says, sure. And then, so I do the thing, but now I'm wide open. It goes to his turn. And he kills me. I said, I thought we have a deal. He goes, oh, you need to know about me. I don't do politics.
Yeah, but you do lie.
So he
Apparently.
was upfront about the fact that I will
That
never.
literally is the definition
well,
of
he was
politics.
not
Lying.
upfront. Yeah. But so he was like, I don't like politics. I will agree to it in the moment and then immediately do whatever I think is the right move when it comes to it. He goes, if I didn't think it was the right move to kill you, I wouldn't have, but I thought it was.
Yeah. See, I mean, and that's the thing is like, for me, my whole thing is, to just inform everybody. The reason why I don't do a lot of politicking is because 85 to 95% of the time, if someone's trying to politic with you, it's probably because they're about to win the game and they just need to keep you away from them for at least that one turn. And almost every single instance that happens. Now, with that being said, I'm more than happy to do open table talk and discuss threats and stuff like that. But like when someone's like,
You're much more
"Don't ever
open to
touch
it
me."
now than you used to be.
and again, I still won't usually I almost never make deals. I mean, now again, I don't play in tournaments as much as Duncan does. I know that sometimes in tournaments, people are a little bit more honoring and they'll do that because they're, or sometimes people are completely cut off. But, politicking is one way that that's what they think is fun about Commander, is just sitting down and politicking with other people and politicking their way to a win, or in some cases lying their way to a win by saying they're going to do something they don't. So,
Right.
Duncan,
I'm
yours was
anti
cool
that.
tricks.
Yeah, well, yeah. I also like a little back and forth.
Yeah.
Counter spell battles. That's so much fun.
Making
I
that
counter, you
stack
counter
big.
mine. I counter this. Who can get around who,
Yeah, I will say recently we had that happen at the shop we were in, and we had, I think, 4 or 5 counters on the stack, and it was just hysterical because I was about to, it was my coin flip deck, flippy, and I had just gotten all my deck basically into my hand, and I was trying to close the game out, and so I'm like, no, I'm gonna counter that, and it just 3 against 1. We're all trying to counter this one spell I was trying to get the resolve to win the game. And it was hilarious because you just saw these, I think it was like 4 or 5 counters we had on the stack.
at least.
It was hilarious. And it was just great. And then once I got the last counter, no one could stop me. Stack completed and I won the game.
So we've
it was
mentioned
fun.
this shop a lot too,
Yeah.
right?
Mystic
and
Forge
that they're-
games.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mystic
It's nice
Forge
for us
game.
to give a freebie out there for maybe the 12 people that are watching.
That's right.
Might have got 2 new listeners.
That's right.
From the last episode, maybe.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
next time they
We're
got
netting
paid
one
for
ep-
advertising.
Yeah,
but this time.
Yeah, when
We're
we
not-
get to 14.
Yeah, we're netting one new listener per episode. So, but that, the counterspell battles I think are cool. I think even the back and forth of just board states too sometimes is really cool.
Sometimes like one person's winning and then there's a board wipe. Like maybe they were dominating the table, like
Yep.
far and away. Now board wipe, timely board wipe comes, wipes
They
the
don't have
board.
cards in
They don't-
hand.
Yeah,
whatever.
they got nothing.
They can't come back, but now another player starts being the problem. And then
Yep.
I like that too, when
Yeah.
it's like everybody gets a chance to do their
Yeah,
thing. And
when at the
everybody,
end
Yeah.
of the game, everybody's sort of done what their deck was supposed to do, but someone still wins. Yeah. You have on here spending time with friends. And I think sometimes, even when we're role playing, that gets lost. Like when you're like,
Yeah.
hey, let's get to the game. Man, I think sometimes those are the best moments when you're just like, I don't care about the game. Let's just talk.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think there's it's fun, especially because all of us are dads, so we all have kids and families and wives and stuff, and so sometimes when we can kind of step out of that reality and like, hey, I'm gonna go play Magic with Jeff and Duncan. I'll tell my wife and stuff like that. And a lot of times we only get like 2 games in, but over those 2 games we spent 3.5 hours, and we got to actually talk and hang out together. And being able to do that is really big. And me and Jeff live a little bit more north of the local game shop that we play at, so we don't get to go down there as much as Duncan does. He's right around the corner from it, so
It's
for
like
us,
a 45-minute
yeah,
drive
for us, it's about a 45 minute drive, so it's a little bit more time consuming for us. But
I also now have a built-in game at my house every day with my kids and the neighbor kid
come over
and play like every other day.
Right. So one of the things I had on the list too was funny wins. So a classic example of this, we talked about it I believe in the previous podcast. Jeff's son Jaden, with his pirate deck, like literally went off on one turn, stole everyone's creatures. They had all creature types. They had Island Walk. They all had plus 10, plus 10 because he stole Merfolk, and then he had another card that made all creatures of all types and like
Baskwood Nexus.
Yeah. So it was just like this. It was just hilarious because it's like we literally just all had defenses set up, and in one fail move of putting out this one card and casting one spell, 10 minutes later, he has all of our creatures and kills all of us with our own stuff. Like,
more than our creatures. He had all of our stuff.
Yeah, he had all the permanent, he had all the artifacts, he had everything. Like there was nothing left except lands on our side of the table.
Yeah.
It was just a hilarious win where, again, it's one of those things where it's super cool, not only because it's his son, it was like the first time his deck really just did something super crazy from my understanding. It was just a funny win. Like I just got killed by all my own stuff that he stole, turned into a pirate. There was also a merfolk that had Island Walk and had +8/+8.
There was also a cat and a dog.
A cat, and it was just like the most absurd thing. And it was just hilarious. It was a funny win. And I think those are fun too, when you pull off these funny wins where it's just like,
Well, not even you
why
pull
did
it
this
off.
work?
You had fun and you're not the one
I
that
didn't
pulled
even
it
pull it off.
Yeah.
My opponent pulled it off. I was like, you know what? I had the fog in my hand. I was like, it's not even worth it. I'm just gonna give it to him because that's hilarious. Like it's so great that was able to happen. So I think when you do stuff like that too, just these funny, weird wins that you get to pull off, I think is super fun about Commander and the game mechanics.
You get to do that sometimes with your coin flip deck.
I do.
Where
My
it's
coin
just
flip-
like one game you kill yourself.
Yep.
And then the next game you just go off and you happen to get 5 coin flips at the same time.
Get omniscience for
and
the
now you have
turn. Get my
omniscience.
whole library in my hand and win the game.
But
Yeah.
I've never enjoyed when you do that.
Yeah, no one does. I thoroughly
I do.
enjoy it.
I
Yeah.
love that.
You help him do it,
Yes.
which is infuriating.
No, it's so much fun.
No, it makes me salty.
It's great. So, but I think that's a cool part too, because and that's the other thing too. With one of the things about Commanders, because it is a singleton format, you can sometimes use cards that generally aren't good, but if you find the right commander, it makes them a little bit more
So
fun.
I just built Nekusar, and I didn't ever build it because everybody had built it.
Shame.
They're doing it.
Yeah.
But
If
they're all
everybody's doing it, you should do it too.
no. But
that's
so
what my
I
mom says
built
about jumping off a
Nekusar
bridge.
for one reason: to use a card that I always thought was the worst card in Magic.
Yeah.
I saw no use for, and then I found a use for it. And it's the forced fruition that says whenever a player casts a spell, they draw 7 cards.
Yep.
That's
Well,
so
if you're
gross.
playing Nekusar and you have the damage per card up to 2 or 3,
Yep.
they're
Yeah.
going to think twice about casting anything.
Yeah.
I got one like that, Uba Mask.
Oh yeah.
Yep.
Uba Mask is, look it up. It's a weird card.
Yeah.
But I built a Tiny Bones deck to take advantage of Uba Mask. And I'm sure listeners are like, what the heck is an Uba Mask?
Yeah,
Let me look
actually,
it up
now that
here.
you say that, I have a card too that I, for the longest time, had no idea why it was a good card or whatever, and I couldn't really find a good deck to put it in to really get the value out of it. And then lo and
So
behold,
for those that don't know, Uba Mask is an artifact that says if a player would draw a card, that player removes that card from the game face up instead. Each player may play cards he or she removed from the game with Uba Mask this turn.
So the idea is they can't have cards in their hand, therefore Tiny Bones can use his ability.
Right.
So you could do direct damage. So it's just one of those fun, neat things, and you'll never see that card anywhere else.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
right, and so
So maybe not even funny wins, but just funny cards or funny
Yeah,
things you
this
can
one's like
use.
Uba Mask. What the heck?
Yeah, just because the other thing I did with my Nekusar deck that I'm sure somebody has done before, I'm sure I didn't reinvent the wheel, but it wasn't the thing you always see with Nekusar. I worked on the fact of the trigger. I didn't try and increase the damage. I increased the triggers.
So it happened. Okay. Yep.
Yeah.
yeah, so it happens more often
Yeah.
instead. Yeah.
So Harmonic Prodigy, Roaming Throne,
yeah,
stuff like
so
that.
the one that I did, I put it in my ninja deck, my blue black, is Limdol's
Because
Vault.
that deck needed help.
well,
Lindell's
it's-
Vault in that deck is gross.
Yeah.
but it was one of those cards where I kept reading it. I was like, man, it's like, it seems like so weird because you don't really get to draw them. You just get to change the top 5. You get to put them on the bottom, and I couldn't find a deck that really gave me the value out of it until I came across my ninja deck, which is reveal cards and deal damage equal to CMC. And I had this Limdol's Vault forever, which look at the top 5 cards of your library. As many times as you choose, you may pay 1 life, put those cards on the bottom of your library in any order. Then look at the top 5 cards of your library. Then shuffle your library and put the last cards you looked at on top of your library in any order this way. And it's a blue and a black. And I was like, for the longest time, I could not find a good deck to put it in. And when I built my ninja deck, I was like, that's great. I can actually manipulate the top 5 cards and put them back. And so it was one of those cards I had for such a long time that I couldn't find a good home for.
That could probably go in like a top 20 or top 30 underrated cards.
Yeah,
Right.
No, that
Because
card,
it
you're
is
like,
actually
I
a
couldn't find
really
a
good
card.
card.
Right.
A deck to put in. I'm like any deck that runs those
Yeah.
colors. I would
right.
put that
And
in.
it's just such a great little niche card.
But so these are all the different ways, right? That we all enjoy playing Magic. Some people enjoy kind of the darker side, the lying, or
Chaos.
the
Land destruction.
chaos isn't what I'm talking about. Land destruction. I'm talking about the darker side, like the lying about your deck or the purposefully misrepresenting what it is so that you can pub stomp them, or
like saying I have this is a 6
6,
and it's
So-
really a 9.
So
Yeah.
unfortunately, there are those people out there, but you quickly figure out who they are. They don't tend to find play groups that are permanent,
Right.
and they tend to kind of just move along.
Just be careful when you judge people on that, because you can have a deck that's a 6 and gets the perfect series of events and sometimes could look like a 9. So be careful when you judge that.
Yes.
If you've played it a lot of times, you'll know. But just remember, even a 6 can sometimes just like...
And a 5 deck can have powerful cards in it, like Mana
Yeah.
Crypt and Force of Will.
Well,
and
I
stuff.
mean,
Well,
and
I
I
don't
would,
know.
I,
I
see,
don't know
I
if
would
it could be a
count,
5
I
now,
would
though.
count.
no, it would totally be a 5 if there's no win con in the deck and the commander doesn't do much.
Yeah, maybe.
Well, then you're not even playing Magic. you're just showing a collection of cards at that point.
There are a lot of decks I've faced that
Look at
are,
all the cards
could
I
be
bought
falling
that I
into
don't know
that
how to build a
category.
deck.
But it's also subjective too, right? If your play group tends to be higher power and that's all you've ever played with, but in that group you're kind of lower tier, you're going to misrepresent and say, "Oh, I'm like a 6," when in fact, compared to the general
Right.
populace,
You're actually
you-
like an 8,
Yeah.
but everybody you play with is a 9, so you
Yeah.
feel like you're a 6.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, and I will say there are certain cards I feel like, and maybe we can do this on another episode, that like if this is in your deck, you're probably not that power level. Like there's just certain cards I feel like you
I-
said,
see, I-
Mana
I-
Crypt,
I
and you
disagree.
disagree, which I think would be a great topic for us to maybe go over. So
Well,
I
I,
could build
think
a
we have a
dozen.
topic ready for one of our next episodes.
yeah, absolutely.
But what topic do you have this week, Sloan, for
Yeah.
new players?
So veteran tips for beginners. Probably should have done this one first, but I thought of it after I'd written up the episode, the layouts. So this is starting off basic. So if you're new into Magic, there is, as we have talked about, so many different rules, mechanics, different instances. I mean, we're still learning the game with our, that's not what you think it does. So when you're getting into Magic, just there's a couple different things you can do to really make your experience positive and begin to enjoy it and get more and more into it. Obviously we've been mentioning a lot of cards, and some of them, their monetary value is $200 to $300 per card, $400 or $500 per card, $50, $60 per card. And one of the things that I always thought about when I kind of came back to Magic and started the Commander format was, if I'm going to invest in this, I'm going to, I want to try to find something that I like. I don't care if it's powerful. I don't care if it's good. I think if this is a fun mechanic, this is kind of where I want to start, and this is where I want to build off of and kind of step forward. So just finding something that you enjoy kind of at the beginning of this might be more important than you finding something that's going to pub stomp everybody constantly, because you may not be enjoying that as much because you're not being able to enjoy the full experience of actually playing the game just because you went and what's called net decking. You just went online, found a super powerful deck, bought all those cards, put it together, and you're playing against people, and it's your only deck, and like you're just constantly, it may not be fun. So just start off basic. Find something you like, find a mechanic. There's like a bajillion different legendary creatures.
Well, and I think the precons have gotten really good at that.
Right, and that's another thing. One of the really cool things about Magic, specifically the Commander format, because they increased their populace with Commander in general, they started making Commander precons, and they're really well constructed decks. They're super fun.
They are now, yeah.
Yeah,
they're playable decks now.
There's some that in the past weren't great, and then they made a couple that were way too strong. The Eminence decks, I think, is what the mechanic is.
Well, the
and then
decks weren't too. The decks were still garbage, but some of the cards in them were really good. And if you made changes, they became
I mean, some of those
amazing.
Some of those Eminence precon decks, if you try to go look up and buy them, they're still over $100+. And when they originally came out, I think they were $35 to buy it. So they've definitely done a better job of honing what those precons are supposed to do and focusing more on that and making them better and getting more value out of them. I think most of precons now for Commander, you're usually netting $10 or $15 in card value.
Or more. Double, yeah.
But again, a lot of times you don't see that until years later, like with the I think it was Ixalan precons with the deflecting SWAT and the deadly Rollick and the fierce guardianship that came in them. At first,
the original Ixalan.
The original Ixalan. Those cards weren't seen as that much value. And then as soon as they dropped, then people realized what they were.
Remember, they had Arcane Signet in them too.
Right, and they had an Arcane Signet in them. So, the precons are really good. They're well constructed. And, you can find commanders and legendary creatures that, just do what you want and just kind of start from there.
I have a pretty good example of that. So, like, now when I started playing Commander, the precons were not good. So that wasn't really an option. You would have to buy a precon and upgrade it significantly.
Yeah, to get any real value.
But I remember the first deck I tried to build, if you guys remember, was a Captain Sisay Paradox engine.
Right.
And it was so complicated that I didn't understand how powerful it was.
Right.
So when I finally figured out how to play it, I was like, this is not fun. This is just... like you just win.
Right.
And so, that it's, and then the next deck I built from that was a, whether you say Reese or Rise, the Redeemed, and then an Atraxa and not a broken Atraxa, but it's still Atraxa, but that Rise deck was the first one. That was a reasonable deck and I had fun with that. But the Sisay Paradox engine, I might have played it twice.
Yeah, and so that's the thing. So just find something you like. If you're gonna get into Commander, just look up Commander cards. Commanders that you can use as cards that you can use as commanders rather, and just kind of look and find mechanics that you like. There's some mechanics that are kind of silly and goofy, and you're like, but you like it. Go for it. Build that deck, and if you have a good local game shop in LGS, there will be players there that will help you, and they'll give you ideas. Even if the deck's a little wonky, they'll give you ideas to try to make it a little bit better and more fun for you.
Yeah, and they'll sell you ideas too.
Yeah,
they'll sell you the cards.
Yeah, they'll
your
sell
ideas.
you cards. And I know that Duncan has a plethora of decks, but it's funny because he does have a couple of what are called group hug decks, and those are kind of kid mitten decks where they help everybody and they kind of make everybody feel better. And
it's hugs to a point.
Yeah,
hug you to death.
It's hugs / chaos.
Yeah.
Once everybody feels comfortable.
Never mind, I'm out.
Yeah, and then so there's a bunch of different decks you can play. There's different play styles inside of Commander, and heck, you can even build the same Commander someone else does and build it completely different.
Yep.
So There's a lot of stuff to play with, but just start off basic. Just find kind of a mechanic or an idea that you like, see if something fits it, and kind of go from there. You don't have to,
or don't do any of that.
yeah,
Whatever. That's the cool thing with Commander. You do whatever you want.
yeah. If you want to
Just have
deck
fun.
it and go buy $1,000 deck, go for
Don't
it.
lie and don't be a pariah, please.
Right.
But other than that, you could do what you want.
Right.
Right.
But that's a good tip. I like that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that was a good tip.
So I think that's all we have for today. I want to thank everybody for listening. We really appreciate it. You can find us on commanderspod.com. You can find us on Twitter at commanderspod. And just thank you for listening. And remember, kill Andrew first.
That's right. Thank you, guys.